In this video, we're going to show you how to replace the radiator on your Cadillac Escalade located right behind the front grille. Before tackling this job here, you want to make sure that the engine is cool. And then we're going to go ahead and open up the cap here for our expansion tank for the antifreeze. I'm going to spin off this cap here. And go ahead and set that aside. We're going to remove these two 15mm bolts on the front side of our splash shield here. There are four 10mm bolts on the bottom side here. Remove those. Got to remove that splash shield and set it aside. Now on the passenger side frame rail on the outside, there's a plastic shield right here. There's a 13mm bolt right here, and right in front of it is a plastic push pin style lock. I want to go ahead and remove both of these. Use a 13mm socket on the bolt. We're going to use our trim tool and get underneath the front portion of this, pry that out, and then we'll get behind the back section and remove it the rest of the way. Now this portion of our radiator is the passenger side lower section where the radiator hose goes onto. Right here is our drain. What we need to do is spin this counterclockwise and spin this out in order to drain our radiator. So let's go ahead and show you where that is and how we're going to access that. Now to access that drain plug, we're going to go up. Here's our lower radiator hose, and then just over to the right here, you can see the white knob. We need to turn that counterclockwise. So we're just going to put our hand up inside and want to try and twist that counterclockwise. Now if you can't get your hand on there completely, you can use a pair of pliers to go ahead and twist that. Remember, counterclockwise just to break it loose, and then we'll spin that out by hand. Coolant will come out of there, so you want to have a catch can or a bucket underneath to catch any of the coolant that's going to drain out of here. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, go ahead and spin that out counterclockwise. Now at this point here, we're down to just a little dribble. We can go ahead, reach up there, and we're going to spin that clockwise and close that up. The radiator will always have some residual coolant in there, so we're going to close it up for now. I want to remove this silver trim here. Literally just pull up, and you're dislodging the plastic push pins from the rubber grommets. Up and then pull forward. Now in order to remove this upper air box here, there are two hose clamps securing this. There's one right over here, right behind your mass airflow sensor. We're going to use a flathead screwdriver to loosen this clamp here. And then there's one over right here to the throttle body. We're going to go ahead and loosen that one as well. On the back side of the airbox, there's going to be two vacuum hoses, one here on the passenger side, there's one over here on the driver's side. They come off really easy. There is a gray clip on the top right here. You're simply going to push down and pull it off. So push down, twist that off. The other side is just the opposite. This gray push clip here is on the bottom side. So on the driver's side, you're going to push up and then pull that hose off, like so. And once you have that all set there, we can now go ahead and remove this unit. We're going to lift up, pull forward and wiggle it, disconnect it from the throttle body right here. And then we're going to disconnect the flex hose from the air filter box. And remove this unit. Using your trim tool, want to go ahead and use this to remove the plastic push pins holding the radiator cover in place. So we're just going to lift up the center, pry that up, and then go into the bottom side and pull out the whole button. I want to go ahead and do this for the other clips. Should be a total of 14 of these. With all the plastic buttons removed, you should be able to lift this up, remove it, and set it aside. On the driver's side here, we want to disconnect the upper radiator hose from the radiator. Using your pliers, compress that clamp. Twist that hose and just wiggle this off. You can release that hose clamp. With that upper radiator hose removed, I'm just going to use a securing strap here just to hold this up and out of the way. Disconnect our expansion hose here. Just pop these out of the two clips. And we're just going to tuck that aside here. Now on our cooling fans, we have two electrical connectors. One right here is one on the passenger side fan. On the back side of this connector right here, there's just a little push tab. You're going to push it down and wiggle that connector off like so. And you're going to use our trim tool. I'm going to release the little retainer clip here. Go ahead and pop that off. I'm going to do the same for the other side. Now these connectors here have a little lock tab. This one here has a little gray tab on it, and what you want to do is you want to push it over. We can use our pocket screwdriver, get in there and just gently work that over. And once you have that lock tab pushed over, we can press on this little tab here and disconnect the connector. Here's that tab. Now these connectors here have a little lock tab. This one here has a little gray tab on it, and what you want to do is you want to push it over. We can use our pocket screwdriver, get in there and just gently work that over. And once you have that lock tab pushed over, we can press on this little tab here and disconnect the connector. Here's that tab. Now we want to go ahead and disconnect the other plastic retaining clips holding our hoses here. Just pry that out. We're going to do the same on our lower radiator hose. On the lower passenger side of the cooling fan assembly, there is another plastic clip holding a transmission cooler line. Just put your pry tool in there and go ahead and pop that little plastic retainer out. Now on the driver's side here is a 10mm bolt for the cooling fan assembly. Let's loosen and remove that. There's one on the passenger side in the same exact spot. Bring that cooling fan out and lift it straight up. We have our expansion tank hose right here with our clamp, so just going to use our pliers. Going to pinch that. Pinch that, wiggle that hose off of the radiator. Work that clamp back. And I'm just going to grab that hose and I'm gently going to twist it because our hose is kind of stuck on there. Once that's free, go ahead and twist that off. Set that aside. On these lines on the passenger side, we have an upper one and a lower one. I'm going to go ahead and slide this collar back. Now underneath, there is a clip that goes into place here. We're going to use our pick, and what we need to do is pop this clip out. Now it is under tension, so when we pop this out, you want to be careful not to lose it. So you're going to put your fingers around it while you undo the clip. And what you're doing is you're pretty much releasing this clip right here from the groove, and that locks that line into place. We're going to go ahead and do the bottom one as well, and then we're going to go ahead and pull these lines out of the radiator. We have our lower radiator hose here. We want to use our pliers. We want to release that clamp, slide that back, and then we'll slide that lower radiator hose off. Once that's loose, we should be able to go ahead and grab that lower radiator hose and twist that off. Now there might be some residual coolant left in this, so we have a catch can underneath. On the top of our radiator, we have 13mm bolts, one on the driver's side, one on the passenger side. Let's go ahead and loosen and remove those. Now that we have our radiator unbolted here, we need to have room to tip it back. We're going to have to remove our air box right here for our air filter. We're going to do so by lifting up on this red clip here. This is a little red lock clip for our mass airflow. And then press in on the tab. We're going to disconnect this harness, pop that aside. I'm going to pull up on the box here. We're going to dislodge the post from the rubber grommets underneath. Kind of manipulate this up and out of the way. Now there's a bolt holding the AC condenser to the radiator on the passenger side, right about the middle position here. We need to gain access to that. We're going to do so by grabbing our radiator, lifting it up a little bit, and tilting it in. Along the top here, there's a plastic trim. We need to go ahead and pull this up and off. Now to gain access here, we're going to just try and pull that AC condenser and radiator towards the engine. We have our 10 millimeter on there with our ratchet. All right, now that we have that loose, we're just going to spin that socket on the ratchet, zip that bolt right out. A little bit of an awkward position to get to, but it is definitely doable. We have that bolt out. I'm going to carefully try and remove that from underneath here without losing it. Here's the bolt right there. Now the condenser is set into plastic tabs on the radiator on the top and bottom, both on the passenger side and the driver's side. So what we need to do is we're going to grab that AC condenser, we're going to lift it upward and dislodge it from the radiator. All right, we've got the passenger side there. Let's go ahead and switch over to the driver's side. Now on the bottom side of the driver's side here, we have this line. We just need to pop this out of the clip on the side of the radiator. Now on this side here, we have the same style clip. I'm going to use a pry tool here to just gently push in on this clip. Now I want to lift up on the condenser here. Okay, and go ahead and separate the radiator from the AC condenser. And start to lift up that radiator. Carefully inspecting not to hit anything or tear anything else out. Now as you pull this out, on the bottom you want to pay attention to the rubber grommets on the bottom. There's one on the passenger side, one on the driver's side. You may leave these grommets in the vehicle, so be careful, pay attention to those there, those are critical. Now we can go ahead and remove the radiator. Now if you have a new radiator and want to go ahead and install it, you want to pay attention to the components you're going to have to switch over. Some of these rubber grommets here. Push out the pin, slide the grommet out, install it onto the new radiator, install the pin back in, the insert. These metal clips here, you would just use a pry tool, maybe a pocket screwdriver or something, pop that off. Same thing down below here, pop that one off, install them onto the new unit. On the bottom, if you removed your radiator and the rubber grommets are there, swap it over. Make sure that the large piece is facing the bottom. Install it onto the radiator. I'm going to do the same for the other side. Bring the radiator over. You want to be careful when lowering it down. Lower the radiator down into place. Now I want to go ahead and bring our AC condenser up. I'm going to pop this back in. Now the condenser itself has these tabs here. These tabs are the ones that fit into the clip on the radiator. So you want to make sure that the lower one and the upper one pop into place. Repeat that process for the passenger side. Okay, driver's side is in, and we can go ahead and pop that line back in. Now that we engage the driver's side of the condenser into the radiator, let's go ahead and do the passenger side. Now that you have the condenser dropped into the little tabs on the radiator, we're just going to double check the driver's side and make sure both sides are locked in with that. Once we do that, we'll go ahead and install our bolt on the front side. All right, once you get that bolt in, try and thread it in as far as you can by hand. And then we'll drop our ratchet down inside there and snug that down. All right, snug down that bolt. Bring up our little plastic cover here. All right, now that we have that cover on, we just need to inspect around the radiator, and condenser should literally just kind of go back really easy. So when you're pushing the radiator and the condenser back, you want to make sure that there's no resistance with it going back. You might have to check the wire loom on the top, make sure it's not binding up on the plastic cover here between the condenser and the radiator. Check the cooler lines on the other side. Make sure nothing is binding up. Once you have that lined up, I think it's safe to go ahead and install our two 10mm bolts to hold the radiator in place. I'm going to start on the driver's side, install the bolt through the bushing. I like to thread this in as far as I can by hand. It's nice and easy. Just going to do the same on the passenger side. Snug these bolts down. And once that bolt bottoms out, just give it a little bit more. Do the same for the driver's side. Bottomed out, a little bit more. Now for our lines here, we have our spring clips here. Now these clips get installed first. All right, the clip is in place. Let's go ahead and install the bottom one. Okay, have the clip in. Oh, good. Line up our lower hose here. And push that in. That is locked in. Let's do the same for the upper. Let's go ahead and slide our collars back on. Do the same for the bottom. Let's line up our lower radiator hose. Slide that on to the bottom neck here. I'm just going to grab our pliers and move that hose clamp back into position. And go ahead and get that hose clamp put on. In order for me to get the hose clamp onto our lower radiator hose, I had to pop off the lower metal line here. So I just released that clip, popped that line out like we did before. And we can reinstall that metal clip. Reinsert the metal line. Snap it in and put our lock collar on. All right, let's lower our cooling fan down in a position. As we drop this down, I want to go ahead and engage the lower part of the cooling fan into the tabs on the lower part of the radiator. It's going to be on both the driver and passenger side. Once we have that dropped into place, let's go ahead and install the two bolts that are holding the cooling fan to the radiator. Now that we have our fan lined up, let's go ahead and install our bolts. I'm going to start it by hand. Go ahead and install the one on the driver's side. Let's go ahead and snug those down. And once that bolt bottoms out, just want to go quarter turn. Do the same on the driver's side. These don't have to be super tight, they just need to be snug because you're securing plastic to plastic. Bottomed out, quarter turn, and it's nice and snug. And install our retainers here for our hoses. And then we can install our electrical connectors for our fans. Now remember, when we push on our connectors, we need to push over the gray tab here to lock it into place. Line it up, push it on, and then press that tab in. And do the same for the other fan assembly. You'll hear them click into place, and then press that tab in. And press in our little plastic lock tabs. We have our lower line over here. Install that clip. Once you push that one in there, we're going to follow this line up, and it clips into the side of the radiator. We'll go ahead and snap this into place here. We'll remove our retaining strap for our upper radiator hose. And what we're going to do is open up that hose clamp. And bring our expansion hose over. Clip this into the top of our cooling fan. Let's go ahead and feed our air filter box down and into place. You're going to put the port inside the fender well for the air intake. Get that lined up. And then once that's in, we can line up the post. Pop that down into place. Take our mass airflow sensor right here, the harness, line that up, push it on. You can hear it snap in. Don't forget to press the little red lock tab down. And we have our expansion tank hose right here. I want to go ahead and slide this onto the radiator here. Once it's pressed on, let's go ahead and use our pliers and move our hose clamp down into place. Install the plastic cover here. Drop it down into place. Now let's go ahead and install all of our plastic push pins in place. Now what I like to do is push the bases in, make sure I get all of these in place and that the whole panel lines up perfect, and then I come back and push down the center locks. And once they're all in, just come on back and push down all the lock tabs. We want to install our air intake here. Going to line this up with our air intake or air box over here. Work it onto the throttle body. And on the back side here, there is a mounting tab that goes inside this notch, so that fits into place. Let's now go ahead and secure the two clamps on the throttle body and the air intake tube. I want to go ahead and snug this down. You don't want to over tighten it. Just snug it down gently. And let's go ahead and get to the one by the throttle body. Make sure this is pushed on all the way. Snug it down. Install our vacuum tubes. They pretty much line right up. Push it on, and you hear it snap into place. We're going to repeat for the driver's side. And insert the back side of our trim here into the intake, and then bring down the front. Press that on. Now at this point here, we have our radiator completely installed. I want to go ahead and top off that cooling system. I'm going to go ahead and install our funnel here, and we're going to add the appropriate amount of antifreeze to the system. Now I want to continue to add through here. We need to fill up our radiator, and we're going to fill the tank as well. Now once you've gotten this up to the full mark on the side of the tank over here, you want to go ahead and install the cap. You're going to take the vehicle for a road test. You want to get up to operating temperature. Once you've done that, open up the hood again and check the side of the tank here. If you're low, you want to let this cool down a little bit. Once it's cool, open up the cover or the cap, and you're going to repeat this process until this is topped off and you're leveled. At that point there, you're all set. Now once you've filled up the system and you're satisfied with the level here and everything is good to go, at that point there you want to go ahead and look underneath the vehicle, check for any coolant leaks. Once you're done with that, go ahead and install the cover underneath. Now from underneath, it's always a good safe bet to go ahead, reach up, and just make sure that that drain plug is tightened up. Now we did this earlier, but it's always good to double check it. At this point, go ahead and use a towel, wipe down any residual coolant from when we drained it initially. Now we're going to install the side cover here. Put that up in place. And on the front portion of this was the plastic push pin. So go ahead and line that up. Push that push pin in and lock it into place. On the front side, we have the bolt. Get that up in there. Now that we have our bolt started, let's go ahead and thread that in as far as you can by hand. Then we can go ahead, tighten that down. Snug it into place. Let's go ahead and put up our undercover shield here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by getting our 10mm bolts started on the bottom side here. Now those two will hold that shield in place. I'm going to install the two rear. Now we have the last two bolts on the front. Now let's go ahead and tighten them all down. Let's tighten down the two front ones. And we're just snugging these down until they bottom out. You're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.